Dear Africans throughout the diaspora, the Western society has conditioned millions of us to adopt the belief that there are many truths and that everyone is entitled to their own truths. But that's a false ideology they've spread into our communities to impede our liberation. The truth of the matter is that there's only one truth. If you're not functioning based upon what is actually true, you are therefore functioning based upon a lie. Usually, people have the right to believe whatever they choose to believe. However, there's a profound exception to this rule when it comes to the oppressed. The oppressed must function based upon what is actually true. More specifically, the oppressed must gain a clear, concise, and accurate understanding of our plight and condition in order to liberate ourselves. Because if our understandings are flawed, then all of our liberating strategies and remedies that stems from those flawed understandings will also be flawed. We must function based upon what is actually true in order to develop the proper counter strategies that are necessary in order to liberate ourselves. This is precisely the reason why white oppressive forces have spread so much false information into our black communities in regard to our plight and condition. Keeping us believing in falsehoods is how they prevent us from liberating ourselves. This is why those of us who knows the truth must teach African proverb. We never made the N-word ours, and using it does not empower us. The truth is the opposite on both accounts. White oppressive forces socialize us to do so, and using it subconsciously conditions us to perceive ourselves through a false, inherent, inferior identity that aids the white society in maintaining its white social dominance over us. Most of what millions of us have been misled to believe are lies that keeps us mentally enslaved by white oppressive forces. A Bible written by history's proven most ungodliest group is inherently totally disqualified from containing God's true words. A Bible brutally beaten into the blood-soaked minds of our enslaved ancestors will never set us free. We are not our worst enemies. White oppressive forces still are. Misleading us to perceive ourselves as our worst enemies is how they prevent us from unifying against them. We are not being controlled by a silly slave syndrome myth. That feeble-minded premise contains what would in fact be the least effective and least plausible method for controlling generations of millions of people. We're actually being controlled by the white society's monopoly over the contents that are being unrelentingly fed into our minds 24/7. And we Africans in America are in fact descendants of Africa. Millions of us have taken DNA analysis that have scientifically, irrefutably proven our African identity. The reason why they want us believing that we're not from Africa is because when we Africans in the U.S. are divided from native Africans, we lose our global numerical advantage, and we're stripped of all hopes of ever defeating global white supremacy. Believing that we're not from Africa also separates us from our unified African heritage. Without having a base identity to connect to our vast cultural wealth, over time we become further fragmented and we become weaker as a people. We can then be made into anything that our oppressors wants us to be. They have our people drowning in so much false information and so mentally enslaved that telling the black liberating truth now literally offends millions Millions who now therefore fight against those of us who try to free their minds. They control us most by keeping us believing the fraudulent, worse narratives about ourselves. White social scientists determined a long time ago that by negatively distorting what black people believes about ourselves collectively, more specifically, by making us believe that there's much validity to the white society's racism towards us, they could neutralize our inherent response to rebel against the white oppressive society. They achieved this by subjecting us to media propaganda that keeps us believing the fraudulent, worse narratives about ourselves. Furthermore, doing so creates a significant amount of within the black population that are so self-loathing that they fight against their own people in defense of the white society. This group is called the Black Buffer Class. The Black Buffer Class is comprised of a segment of the black population that have become so demoralized by the white society's unrelenting negative depictions of our racial group that they become very resentful towards their own people, and they'll literally fight against their own people in defense of the white society. This is because they've literally been manipulated to perceive our own people as being the bad people and to perceive white people as being the good ones. These black people goes out of their ways to try to show the white population that we're not all bad, and they seek white validation and approval. They're referred to as the buffer class because they act as a buffer between the white society and the black population. Nowadays, before black people can even confront the system of white supremacy, we're forced to have to first fight against these buffer class black people that have been brainwashed to defend it. However, these buffer class black people are unaware that they've been brainwashed to think as they now do. They think that their thoughts are their own free will, but it's not. They've been manipulated to do so. This entire psychological warfare system works by keeping black people believing the fraudulent worst about ourselves. This is why all of our narratives are negative. But the true hidden reality is that in the U.S., Caucasians are the largest recipient of welfare, are the largest benefactors of affirmative action, and most violent crimes in the U.S. are in fact committed by Caucasians. And in spite of cultural trauma wrought by the injustice of white racism and slavery, most inventions that have revolutionized the world were either invented by black people or directly inspired by early inventions by black people. Their negative claims about us are lies that neutralizes our collective outrage against them. And it worked perfectly. They have literally created a psychological prison for our minds. And those of us who do not critically think never notices their mental change. Moreover, they become enemies of those who try to free their minds. Welcome to the real world. I've just explained to you what the real matrix is. Brothers and sisters, time to wake up. One love and peace.